Octavius, there was a girl playing an accordion or flute when we were here in 2019. You know what I'm talking about?
Here we all ready?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Blues Talks at the Centrum Foundation. I'm your host, Mark Puryear, and I'd like to introduce our guest for our first talk, which will be discussing the connections between the blues and gospel, or should I say gospel and the blues. To my right, we have Shirley
Smith.
Shirley Smith. And Shirley, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, please? Thank you.
Yes, I am from Detroit, and I have been, gospel music has been part of my life, my entire life. I started playing piano at 3, and my whole family is musically inclined, so it cultivated my gift. I have a music school in Detroit. I teach about 50 clients a week, personal, private lessons, voice and piano. And I am also a music director at a local church in Detroit.
Great. And next to Shirley is Pam English.
Yes.
And Pam, could you do likewise? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I am Pam English from Detroit. My music career started very early, singing at the age of 3, playing piano at the age of 7, first recording at the age of 8. And I'm a songwriter, vocal producer, arranger, and it's just been a part of my family throughout. I am the president of the music school. We also have a group
Yeah.
called 7. We also travel around the country doing workshops such as here at Centrum. And I'm just excited to be here and share my knowledge and skill and passion for gospel music with all of the people here at Centrum.
Thank you. And next to Pam is Lloyd Buchanan, and Lloyd hails from Georgia. And Lloyd, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name is Lloyd Buchanan. I'm from Columbus, Georgia, and like the others, I grew up in church singing at a very early age with my mother, who was a great influence of gospel music, and as well as traveling behind my grandfather and his quartet group, trying to do everything I could do to sing and play with them. All of my family on my mother's side are musical people. And so I've shared that upbringing within church. And it wasn't until the age of 19 that I was actually able to hear my first secular song. All of my upbringing had been strictly gospel. And going away to college helped me expand more. But I still find that love and that soul and stir of spirit in gospel.
All right, great. And next to Lloyd is John Tavius Willis, and John Tavius is also the artistic director here at the Blues Week at Centrum Acoustic Blues Week. And John Tavius, tell us a little bit about yourself, too, please.
My name is John Tavius Willis. I am born in LaGrange, Georgia, from a small town of Greenville, Georgia. I grew up in, they call it a primitive Baptist church with my grandfather, and we spent a lot of time singing, and he was the one that's kind of the crossroads of the secular and sacred for me. He was real, being in those rural places, kind of like a glimpse in another world. Most of it was agriculture, and everybody had their own, and my granddad had his own, and so going to church was like the highlight of the week. A lot of people. So and for me as well, I started singing up there pretty bad, but about 3 years old. But I wanted to be like my granddaddy so bad, So church has always been, his uncles and daddy and stuff built the church, and we still go to the same church that's been there since 1902. So that's me.
Oh, this is great. We have a wonderful panel. I think one question I'm going to throw out for everyone, I'll just go down the line again, is because I hear a theme of family, and I know that's very strong in the gospel tradition. Many people grow up in the tradition. But something Lloyd said to me, or said to us, really made me think about the connections as we talked about sacred and secular. And if each of you could maybe expound on that, when you heard or when you engaged with secular music, and what in particular, because I know harmonically, there's a lot of similarity. If you could talk a little bit about that too, is what maybe what drew you to the secular, or what when you recognized that there was a connection between the two.
Well, for me, Mark, it was a fusion of music, musical exposure from the beginning. My father was actually a blues musician and actually taught at several camps, including Elkins and Augusta. And he exposed me to rhythm and blues, funk, blues, which is a little different from R&B. And then my grandmother was a church pianist, and she lived in the same house. So with her being a church pianist, being in the same house, my other grandmother was a female quartet singer. Incidentally, my grandfather started the Vandellas, and I didn't know it until the last 10 years. My grandmother passed. We were getting in touch with people, and because being a career musician, you don't go around saying, "Yeah, my granddaddy started the Vandellas," even though you're from Detroit. But some of the points made sense because they lived in a section of town called the Brewster Projects,
Yes.
where a lot of the Motown acts hailed from. So when my grandmother passed, my aunt goes, "We have to get in touch with Trudy." I said, "Who's Trudy?" She said, "Oh, the Vandellas." I go, "Oh my God, it's true?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "Google your grandfather."
Yeah.
So I did. And Martha Reeves credits my grandfather for starting the Vandellas. So I literally had classical music, but it was my dad. My dad was that champion, and he would allow me to listen. Well, not allow. He would just expose me
Yes.
to Bob Marley, Phoebe Snow, Gino Vanelli, and he would just so many different types of music. So I just had it simultaneously exposed to me every single day.
That's amazing. Yeah, and tell us the name of your dad.
Richard Smith.
Okay,
Richard Smith.
Yes.
Yep.
I
They call him Motor City Smitty.
I counted Richard at Augusta, Elkins and Augusta's a few times.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Very talented musician.
Yeah.
Played everything.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, every instrument in that whole setup, he played it all and played well.
Yeah, he loved the band labs. Those
Yeah.
were his favorites.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember him fondly. So Pam, tell us a little bit about your story and connections.
I think my connection started early, although I was very much rooted in the church. My mom was a lyric soprano. She exposed me at an early age to all types of music. So she took me to the orchestra. We went to go see Leontine Price sing opera.
Nice.
I watched her, and she was a lyric soprano, and she recorded with our church choir, several times. And so I watched them. I also watched my godfather, who was also minister of music at the church I grew up with for almost 70 years. Wow. And he's the one who pushed me to sing. He's the one who pushed me to start playing. And so I started playing, classical music and things. But then we were exposed to so many different types of music. So during the week, we would listen to gospel, but my mom liked Motown and everything else too. So that would be playing as well. On Saturday morning, get up and clean up. What did we listen to? We listened to some Motown, right? Right. And so I think all of that exposure just really opened me up to any type of music. We got to high school, we were singing choral music. And so all of those influences and experiences kind of made a bridge for me with sacred and secular, because gospel is in everything. Gospel is where it began with that struggle, with it during slavery. All those times, that music was birthed in that time. And now you hear gospel music in everything you listen to. And in secular, you hear secular inside of gospel. They take some of those pieces, they blend them together. And so as I have, grown, through these years, I've been able to, put all of those things together and appreciate each different genre for what it brings, and then collectively how we can bring those things together. So secular and sacred have always been a part of my growing up and learning about music.
Great. Yeah, it's rich. It's rich.
Yes.
Yeah. So Lloyd, what about you? Mentioned at 19, you heard your first.
Hey, man, it was
So I'm intrigued.
it was like giving some good red velvet cake to someone for the first time. You know what? Because of my mom was my dad too was very conservative and called them. They really wanted to protect us from things that they felt were negative influences.
Yes.
And so, and I understand that now, not then.
Yeah.
I understand it now. Then it was like, all my friends are listening to other things. But for me was learning the whole meaning of gospel is good news. And so for me, when I started reading the lyrics and becoming listening to Bobby Blue Bland and Curtis Mayfield, and I'm like, oh wait, what? There's good news. Even in this, and even though blues and gospel really share about struggles, I got a crown up in that kingdom. Ain't that good news? That's a gospel song, but even some of the blues songs, there's really still this pronunciation of and expression of this happens. Life happens.
Yes.
Breakups happen. Loss happens. I don't care if you're Christian, Buddhist, whatever you are, life happens.
Yes.
And so music just helps us express our response to life happening.
Yes.
And so for me, listening to gospel music is knowing where those gospel artists, where they run or where they communicate when life happens. But we all communicate, whether or not we're communicating with our friends about, girl, did you hear what this joker just did? You know what I mean? And so when I began to see music from that perspective, it was allowing me to break free from the prism of which of seeing life through my mother and father's lens,
Yes.
but rather to understand it through my own.
Right.
And so I was appreciative of, and so now there's a great appreciation now. And then you discover all these amazing singers that just because they're singing secular music, they were all coming out of the church. Right. The church. Aretha is murdering. Curtis is Sam Cooke is complete. And they're all coming from the same place.
Yeah.
And so, I enjoyed and found solace in it.
Yeah. And how about you, John Tavius?
Oh man, well I think in retrospect, going back, I think, you look at the work songs, but some of those weren't necessarily spiritual. Some of those were just straight, hard time. And then you got the spiritual song, instrumental, just kind of singing. And then you work on your way down until the blues and the gospel. And you find there's a lot of cross-pollination with folk like Thomas Dorsey, who started off as a preacher. Then he went back and said he didn't want to do that. He started being a blues man. He was a prolific blues man until he had like a crisis, and then he started, he became the father of gospel music. And then, I think that was like the genesis of a lot of folk stories. And if you look at a lot of blues musicians, a lot of them have a vast repertoire of gospel songs. They go hand in hand because spiritual, sacred music and secular, sacred and secular anyway just go together. Because when people come into church, you ain't getting all holy folk coming into the church. And so it's and then for a lot of people, when I seen the church, for me it was like there was some people the only time they got a good meal. Some people didn't have doctors or psychiatrists to talk to, so they place to bring it out. Some people didn't have good music; the only time they heard music. So there's a lot of things going on in the church, in school. Like a lot of people, like my granddaddy, they were denied education for the public school, so they had church. School was at church, so you got a lot of people. The church mean a lot, especially the generation before. My granddaddy, the generation. So the church was like like the pillar of the community. But yeah, when I look at the blues and the gospel, I feel like they really go hand in hand. It's just both sides of this, two sides of the same coin. You know what I'm saying? It's like I said, it's just so many. You can go so many examples because you can talk about my baby can't stand, don't stand no cheat. My baby or this train bound with the same. You know what I'm saying? Like we take and then we got some of them songs that my granddaddy used to sing a song. He say, Lord, 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 Lord. Well, you sure been good to me. Now I'm listening to that. I shouldn't be thinking about this in church, but Lord, 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 girl, you sure. It's the same thing, but it's the cadence. It's the cadence. And it's a unique black southern thing. I mean, at least that part that end up getting brought and taken to the migration. So it's still us. It's us regardless. So I think when you hear it. And you hear it beyond, I think I always ask my grandmama the same thing to see what they say. It ain't really much about the music as much as it is about the lyrics.
Exactly.
Like, because, so you can sing what you can play anything, but it's the message, like you said, the good news. What is the message of it all? Like it's interweaving, man. And like I said, I grew up on it and I love it, man. I love
Yeah,
it.
you just made me think of this. There's an old documentary, "Wild Women Don't Get the Blues," and there's a piano player in there near the end. Oh God, I'm not gonna think of her name, but she talks about that because she's retired in Florida and she's elderly now. But she's saying, when I was a kid, my mom and dad would leave. All the kids, we had a piano, and all the kids come in the house,
Yeah.
and we'd be playing boogie woogie, and then somebody'd be watching out for mom and dad, and they come down the street. Oh, Lord. They said the music wouldn't change. We just she was because she lit up like a little kid. She was like probably 90, 80, and I was like, that's
Wow.
it. She just said, oh yeah, we just change it,
Man, just to piggyback, if you look at gospel and blues in any era, they complement each other. Even
Yes.
now, if you got contemporary gospel, you got contemporary blues band,
Exactly.
they playing the same stuff anyway. And if you go back to the 20s, you'll find, the same any decade you want to pick.
Yeah.
When the quartet groups start coming out in, like the Sensational Nightingale, all you gotta do is just listen to the blues.
Yes.
Like what about Brother Joe May? Like, knowing the devil ride. It's the same.
Oh, you mean like Ray Charles?
Yes.
Oh my! Rain over town.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, man.
Well, that leads to a question, because I know a lot of people have this thing with, the devil and the sacred maybe you've experienced something like that where the people are very hard line. This is not, and I have, but I'd like you to talk about that, where people just say, this is the line. I know Sam Cooke had to cross that line and leave, a scene or actually community to go and become a secular star. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
What you were saying about life.
Yeah.
That really resonated with me because I heard a preacher say one day that your morality shapes your theology.
Yes.
And how you would change what you believe what the Bible says based on what you go through. You just interpret it differently.
Yeah.
So I remember coming up, and I grew up in a similar situation where in church they didn't want us to listen to secular. Well, because my father was a secular musician, I was like, ha ha. I'm at home. My daddy said I can listen to it. And in the name of, musical expression, it was also about me being educated. So I didn't have to deal with it so much so at home, but it was more in the lines of the church. And I went to a very strict denominational church. I won't say which one, but I remember always having this debate.
Yeah.
Because as a young minister in music, I had to be about 12, 13 as I was starting to play.
Yeah.
And I remember them saying to me, well, if you are promoting this music, you are promoting the devil. And so that worked on me a lot. So I struggled, but this was my friend in school.
Yeah.
And so she went to a different denomination. She would just dispel all those, girl, don't worry about that. And I would, so, we were coming up and I said, well, you heard this new song on the radio? And so I would sneak and listen to it. And she was like, we listen to it all the time. So she really, we've been friends for 41 years, but she gave me courage to delve into what someone was trying to keep me away from.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was my experience.
That's very profound, because I think, as Lloyd was saying, that the impulse of the previous generation, or the impulse of their desire, is to protect
Yeah.
and to shelter.
Yeah.
And for our audience, that's really important to understand that every previous generation of African American family has gone through some serious economic strife. Just the level of bias is off the map the further back you go in history.
Yeah.
And this, I'm leading up to talking about really the economic side of things, because that was the motivation often for people. I know B.B. King spoke about this when he was playing on the street busking as a young man. He played a lot of gospel and religious, and he noticed that when in his particular place, Indianola, Mississippi, If he played some boogie woogie type stuff or, blues, more money got in the pot. So that was his motivation to go and not leave, but to start playing more secular style of music. And I think it's similar with people now where they may be doing secular and getting
Listen.
a better situation with the religious
Yes, sir.
side of things. So they say, well, economics is important. You got to, as I said, family, you got to take care of your family, yourself. And, those things, we all hear the rough stories of, people in the performing business who, essentially burn out, crash, whatever.
Yeah,
They lose themselves.
Yeah.
Is the way I see it. You lose yourself to what you're doing, and you can't keep your identity. So if I could just maybe ask to talk about some of that, and it doesn't have to be a personal experience, but just things about the people in the business or in gospel. And I know there's some very famous gospel artists today who are big stars. So
I would definitely say, there has definitely been an evolution of gospel music from our perspective back then to now. And there are still definitely people in churches who are very straight line.
Yeah.
But I think that because it is the good news, the universality of music is what brings us together. And it's the thing that helps us bridge that gap between, what we know with gospel and every other genre. I know I have plenty of almost all of our friends are ministers of music at churches. And throughout the week, they're everywhere around the world gigging.
yes,
They played for Charlie Wilson. They played for Anita Baker. All of our friends
All
play
our
for
friends,
all
yeah.
the major gospel artists. Why? Because they have to take care of their families.
Exactly.
And music, to our most musicians, music is music.
yeah,
You can play blues. I can sing gospel on top of that. You want me to put opera on top of that? Whatever you know what I'm saying? And it's about, and I think if you look at, we talked about lyrics, right? And the devil and all that. You could take Stevie Wonder's music, all of it, and sing it on the pulpit. He's talking about love.
Yes.
Is that what gospel music in church is about? It's about the love.
Higher ground.
Right, between people. Right? And so, I just think that economically as musicians, we do what we can because we still have to take care of our family. And a lot of times the churches may not be able to provide the level that's needed for support. And so that's something that we expect to happen now, to infuse our knowledge of music with every genre and not be afraid to break those barriers down.
yeah.
And I think to a degree, also, there's a conversation about what is ministry and what is entertainment.
Yes.
That's another conversation for me. When I'm at church, it is trying to connect with the spirit that is happening there, the message that is trying to be given there. And for me, I do see that as a ministry opportunity. I don't see that as my economic overflow. That is me connecting, but by the same token, I'm happy to serve at a church where, if I say I'm playing downtown, man, you look up and it's 100 of them. Because they have brought their wives, they brought their coworkers, because this is an opportunity for us to have great, good, clean entertainment. I can bring my friends.
Yes.
I know this guy ain't tripping with us, but it's going to be quality because he can sing. And they are excited about it. And so there's a family for me to provide for, and I'm happy to be able to do that by traveling all over the world to do it. And I see it as entertainment. I see it as work. But also when I'm back home, I'm happy to see that my contribution as ministry too. And there's the ability to do that.
Yes, that's very well said, because it is multi-levels. It's multifaceted work. And Pam, to your point, I think it's so true. I think of the people I know who are what I call really professional musicians. That's the way they make their bread and butter. And when, the gigs come, you got to take the job. And I remember telling a friend of mine who was kind of amateur, and he was, wanting to be this and that. And I said, you just want to play that one kind of music. You're not going to get a lot of work. Because if you want to really do it, you got to take the call for the gig at the wedding, the bar mitzvah,
The funeral.
the funeral. And it may be 10 people in that room, but you got to play like it's a
And the question to that is that secular? If I'm in a church, but I go play, if I sing at a wedding, or if I go to a concert at the Fisher Theater and watch a play, they have the music from the play, is that secular? Was that, and how's that different from listening to R&B versus
Yeah.
it's all secular?
Yeah.
How do we separate that in church? Because they all listen to secular music when they leave church. Everybody does.
True. Well, today it's almost impossible. I think about, we have so much technology and access,
Yes.
and one of the things I think is lacking in all of this is my personal is wisdom. We have all of this technology, and you see by the junk people put up online and what's happening with a lot of the technology, the direction people take it, it's not to enrich and help us as a species. A lot of it goes, they go to the lowest common denominator, and it's sad because I remember when TV came out and everybody, now I wasn't there, but a lot of people said, "Oh, this is a revolution. It's going to make something." And what happened? Idiot box. But John Tavius, talk a little bit about this as well, because you have been working, touring, and I mean your experience touring must have really informed you about this.
Yeah, sure. But when I started off doing gospel, like I said, I wasn't playing in church. I eventually started playing, but I wasn't playing contemporary either. So it was a niche gospel I was playing too. I was playing the old, you got to move on the slide and stuff.
Yeah.
So I had like special, Black History program, so it was different from everything. I couldn't keep up with, I'm playing like old stuff. So it kind of translated. And then I also was going to church to take my grandparents to church. So when they stopped going and they started staying at home, I stopped going too, you know what I'm saying? Because I used to love to see devotional service and they make the little room shake, like crazy. But when they stop it, I basically stop. But you hear the devil music thing. But my grandparents never said anything about, I see it as being like keeping, close to your chest, just good cultural music, man. Some of the stuff is distasteful on the secular side for sure, but it's a lot of good stuff. A lot of good messages, a lot of good history. It's a lot of good writers. It's every facet of life. It's a lot of good blues stories. I think a lot of people think about blues as being just downtrodden, uneducated, but it's a lot of people that was from all different classes, all different backgrounds. The story that still is good history to tell, and I think a lot of people don't know about that, and a lot of people just associate it with, just the bad stuff. But yeah, my folk were like, it's okay to don't forget where you came from. And I don't.
That's it.
I don't. So, that's pretty.
Well, we're about near the end of our program, but I have one thing I want to if you could just briefly expound on, because there's something that I have a pet peeve about with, not pet peeve, but it's something I find is very important as I've gotten older, and that's cross-generational communication. And John Tavius, you mentioned, everybody here has actually mentioned it. They mentioned grandfathers, grandmothers, parents, and also the community. And if I could be more direct, today's marketing techniques are actually dividing people. It's this age group, that age group's music, this age group's music. And if we could, or just if you talk about that, because I think gospel doesn't say, the 3-year-old doesn't need to be in the room, or the 15-year-old, this isn't going to suit them. It's everybody. It's the whole family. And just talk about that, because I think the secular music used to have that. I know it did. I mean, there was a time when, everybody would have a house party, and the lyrics didn't get that blue that the little kid could be in the room. Usually double entendre was used. Something was used to express those thoughts. Right. Where the little kid didn't, handyman, okay. Doesn't mean anything to a 4-year-old. The right people. So please, if you could talk a little bit about that intergenerational piece.
Well, I with me teaching at the school, a lot of times people assume that I teach only children. I do not. My students range from age 5 to 85. And I find what you just mentioned was so correct about the social media and our technology is slowly dividing us. It gives me an opportunity to share and make that bridge, because I have some students that'll come in and they'll tell me about a song of a new a new gospel artist. And I will say, okay, so you want to do gospel music? They say, yes. I said, well, you need to study the players in the game. Meaning, if you like this person and you love their music, who influenced them? Let's look at the person that influenced them and the person that influenced them. So when I mention a person like Andre Crouch, who is Andre Crouch? I'm glad you asked.
Yes.
So it opens up a whole nother conversation. So it's about sharing in a way that is not condescending, but inspirational, that a person will go and search for themselves, because that's what I found out that person went and he came back and said, oh my God, I didn't know that he wrote this song. I didn't know that he wrote this song. And not realizing that the impact that a Quincy Jones brings to the table is just as profound as the impact that Andre Crouch has brought to the table. It's because a lot of the songs that he wrote, we consider them now as hymns.
Yeah.
The blood that gives me strength, those kind of things. So it's about sharing for me in a condescending way that bridges the gap.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just say really quickly, and I think also to address that, we always make sure, as I was talking about the evolution of gospel, because gospel takes on many forms and it sounds different in many ways. So for us to help that bridge, we make sure that we stay updated on what's happening now.
Yes.
And so we have the historical view and we have the right now view, so that we can reach the younger generation. We have to know what they're listening to.
Yeah.
So we always have our ears to the ground on what's happening now, to make sure that we can, provide that to them, as well as give them a history lesson and some education on where all this came from.
Yes.
That's how.
Very important, the history. Yeah.
Quickly for me, as a music director, everybody, our church was trying to make this hard shift to praise team, and it's a tension, and it's a tension.
Yes.
But the reality of it is the embracing of we're an all contemporary church, and one of the things, and it was a battle, but I'm still a fan of devotions.
Yes.
I am. This when deacons would get up in front of the church and they would line these hymns, and the church would all join and sing together. That's a part of our tradition. That's a part of our history. And most of that part of our history is an oral history. So if I abandon it, am I walking away from the historical aspects of the black church? And I'm not willing to do that.
That's
So, we're going to, guys, just do the song right. Do more than the charge keep I have.
Yeah.
All right, help me there. Choose 10 more that we can do. But also being aware that I can marry the idea of what is contemporary with the hymn. So a lot of times you will find our church doing these really contemporary songs, and as soon as there's a moment to pause, let us reflect back to these hymns.
Yes.
So that way we can connect all generations within the church, because they're all here. So we have to minister to them all. And so that is something I have to be intentional about, to make sure that we don't dismiss it.
Yeah.
Yeah, to piggyback and keep it short, I think multi-generational, in gospel is definitely more prevalent than it is in more, well, definitely the blues, I think, but you need the generation before to kind of guide you in more way than just, telling you the word, but telling you like what is and what ain't. Some people that know better than you. So and so you can keep it going, and you can keep those traditions, like you said, devotional service, just knowing things. I think just looking at the elders, just not even asking questions, just being able to have somebody that you can look up to that have lived life is good. And I think in the church you almost always have somebody, some type of elder. So I think that's always important for for the past. Sure.
All right. So I think we're about done, and I hope you enjoyed our program. This is from the Centrum Foundation. My name's Mark Puryear. Our guests this afternoon were Shirley Smith, Pam English, Lloyd Buchanan, and John Tavius Willis. And I hope you enjoyed the program. Thank you.